Hello everyone, welcome back to the next video. NextJS 15 just got released. Let's look at the blog post. So NextJS is officially stable and ready for production. This release builds on the updates from both RC1 and RC2. We have focused heavily on stability while adding some exciting updates we think you will love. Try NextJS 15 today. So here you can update it and here you can install it. We are also excited to share more about what's coming next at NextJS Conf this Thursday. Here's what is next in NextJS 15. The next code mod CLI, async request API, caching semantics, React 19 support, turbo pack, dev stable, static indicator, unstable after API is experimental, instrumentation.js, enhanced form, next.config, self-hosting environment, server action security, bundling external packages, ESLint 9 support, development and build performance. Smooth upgrades with next code mod CLI. We include the code mod automated code transformation with every major NextJS release to help automate upgrading breaking changes. To make upgrade even smoother, we have released an enhanced code mod CLI. This tool help you upgrade your code base to the latest stable or previous pre-release version. The CLI will update your dependencies, show available code mods and guide you through applying them. The canary tag uses the latest version of the code mod while the latest specifies the NextJS version. We recommend using the canary version of the code mod even if you are upgrading to the latest NextJS version, as we plan to continue adding improvements to the tool based on your feedback. Async request APIs. In traditional server-side rendering, the server waits for request before rendering any content. However, not all components depend on request-specific data, so it's unnecessary to wait for the request to render them. Ideally, the server would prepare as much as possible before a request arrives. To enable this and set the stage for future optimization, we need to know when to wait for the request. Therefore, we are transitioning APIs that rely on request-specific data such as header, cookies, param and search params to be asynchronous. Here we are importing cookie, here is our admin panel and here we are waiting for it. There is a breaking change and affects the following APIs: cookie, headers, draft mode, param in layout.js, page.js, route, default, generate metadata and generate viewport, search param in page.js. For an easier migration, this API can temporarily be accessed synchronously but will show warnings in development and production until the next major version. A code mod is available to automate the migration. For cases where code mod can't fully migrate your code, please read the upgrade guide. We have also provided an example of how to migrate a NextJS application to the new APIs. Caching semantic. NextJS app router launched with opinionated caching defaults. These were designed to provide the most performant option by default with the ability to opt out when required. Based on your feedback, we have re-evaluated our caching heuristics and how they interact with projects like partial pre-rendering and with third-party libraries using fetch. With NextJS 15, we are changing the caching default for get route handlers and the client router cache from cached by default to uncached by default. If you want to retain the previous behavior, you can continue to opt into caching. We are continuing to improve caching in NextJS in the coming months and will share more details soon. Get route handlers are no longer cached by default. In Next 14, route handlers that use the get HTTP method were cached by default unless they used a dynamic function or dynamic config option. In NextJS 15, get functions are not cached by default, so you can still opt into caching using a static route config option such as export dynamic equal to for static. Special route handlers like sitemap.ts, opengraph image.tsx, icon.tsx and other metadata file remain static by default unless they use dynamic function or dynamic config options. Client router cache no longer caches pages component by default. In NextJS 14.2, we introduced an experimental stale times flag to allow custom configuration of the router cache. In NextJS 15, this flag still remains accessible, but we are changing the default behavior to have a stale time of 0 for page segment. This means that as you navigate around your app, the client will always reflect the latest from the page component that becomes active as part of the navigation. However, there are still important behaviors that remains unchanged. Shared layout data won't be refreshed from the server to continue to support partial rendering. Back and forward navigation will still restore from cache to ensure the browser can restore scroll position. Loading.js will remain cached for 5 minutes or the value of stale-time.static configuration. You can opt into the previous client router cache behavior by setting the following configuration. React 19. As part of the NextJS 15 release, we have made the decision to align with the upcoming release of React 19. In version 15, the app router uses React 19 RC, and we have also introduced a backwards compatibility for React 18 with the pages router based on community feedback. If you are using the pages router, this allows you to upgrade to React 19 when ready. Although React 19 is still in RC phase, our extensive testing across real-world application and our close work with the React team has given us confidence in its stability. The core breaking changes have been well tested and won't affect existing app router users. Therefore, we have decided to release NextJS 15 as stable now. So your projects are fully prepared for React 19 GA. To ensure the transition is as smooth as possible, we have provided code mods and automated tools to help ease the migration process. Read NextJS 15 upgrade guide, React 19 upgrade guide, and watch the React Conf keynote to learn more. Pages router on React 18. NextJS maintain backward compatibility for the pages router with React 18, allowing users to continue using React 18 while benefiting from improvements in NextJS 15. Since the first release candidate, we have shifted our focus to include support for React 18 based on community feedback. This flexibility enables you to adopt NextJS while using the pages router with React 18, giving you greater control over your upgrade path. While it is possible to run the pages router on React 18 and app router on React 19 in the same application, we don't recommend this setup. Doing so could result in unpredictable behavior and typing inconsistency, as the underlying APIs and rendering logic between the two versions may not fully align. React compiler experimental. The React compiler is a new experimental compiler created by the React team at Meta. The compiler understands your code at deep level through its understanding of plain JavaScript semantics and rules of React, which allows it to add automatic optimization to your code. The compiler reduces the amount of manual memoization developers have to do through APIs such as use memo and use callback, making code simpler and easier to maintain and less error prone. With NextJS 15, we have added support for React compiler. Learn more about React compiler and available NextJS config option. The React compiler is currently only available as a Babel plugin, which will result in slower development and build times. Hydration error improvements. NextJS 14.1 made improvements to error messages and hydration error. NextJS 15 continues to build on those by adding an improved hydration error view. Hydration error now display the source code of the error with suggestion on how to address the issue. For example, this was a previous hydration error message in NextJS 14.1, unhandled runtime error. NextJS 15 has improved this particular thing. Turbo pack dev. So we are happy to announce that the next dev turbo pack is now stable and ready to speed up your development experience. We have been using it to iterate on Vercel.com, nextjs.org, v0 and all of our other applications with greater results. For example, with Vercel.com, a large NextJS application, we have seen up to 76.7% faster local server startup time, up to 96.3% faster code updates with fast refresh, up to 45.8% faster initial route compile without caching. TurboPack does not have disk caching yet. You can learn more about TurboPack dev in our new blog post. Static route handler. NextJS now display a static route handler during development to help you identify which routes are static or dynamic. This visual cue makes it easier to optimize performance By understanding how your pages are rendered, you can also use the next build output to view the rendering strategy for all your routes. This update is part of our ongoing efforts to enhance observability in Next.js, making it easier for developers to monitor, debug, and optimize their application. We are also working on a dedicated developer tools with more details to come soon. Learn more about the static route indicator, which can be disabled, executing code after a response with unstable after experimental. When processing a user request, the server typically performs tasks directly related to computing the response. However, you may need to perform tasks such as logging, analytics, and other external system synchronization. Since these tasks are not directly related to the response, the user should not have to wait for them to complete. Deferring the work after responding to the user poses a challenge because server functions stop computation immediately after the response is closed. After is a new experimental API that solves this problem by allowing you to schedule work to be processed after the response has finished, streamlining, enabling secondary tasks to run without blocking the primary response. To use it, add experimental.after to next.config.js. Then import the function in server component, server action, route handlers, or middleware. Learn more about unstable after. Instrumentation.js table. The instrumentation file with register API allows user to tap into the Next.js server lifecycle to monitor performance, track source of errors, and deeply integrate with observability libraries like OpenTelemetry. This feature is now stable and adds the experimental instrumentation config option can be removed. In addition, we have collaborated with Sentry on designing a new on request error hook that can be used to capture important context about all errors thrown on the server, including router, pages router, or app router, server context, server component, server action, route handler, or middleware. Report the error to your favorite observability provider. So here on request error as well as register, learn more about on request error function. Form component. The new form component extends the HTML form element with prefetching, client-side navigation, and progressive enhancement. It is useful for forms that navigate to a new page, such as search form that leads to a results page. Import from next form. And here form action, search, input name, query, button type, submit. The form component comes with prefetching. When the form is in view, the layout and loading UI are prefetched, making navigation fast. Client-side navigation on submission, shared layouts, and client-side state are preserved. Progressive enhancement. If JavaScript hasn't loaded yet, the form still works via full page navigation. Previously, achieving this feature required a lot of manual boilerplate. For example, learn more about the form component. Next.js now supports the TypeScript next.config.ts file type and provides a next config type for autocomplete and type safe options. Improvements for self-hosting. When self-hosting application, you may need more control over cache control directives. One common case is controlling the stale while revalidate period send for ISR pages. We have implemented two improvements. You can now configure the expire time value in next.conf. This was previously the experimental.hwr delta option. Updated the default value to 1 year, ensuring most CDNs can fully apply the stale while revalidate semantics as intended. We also no longer override custom cache control values with our default values, allowing full control and ensuring compatibility with any CDN setup. Finally, we have improved image optimization when self-hosting. Previously, we recommend you install Sharp for optimizing images on your Next.js server. This recommendation was sometimes missed. With Next.js 15, you no longer need to manually install Sharp. Next.js will use Sharp automatically when using Next.start or running with standalone output mode. To learn more, see our new demo and tutorial video on self-hosting Next.js. Enhance security for server actions. Server action are server-side functions that can be called from the client. They are defined by adding the use server directive at the top of a file and exporting an async function. Even if server action or utility function is not imported elsewhere in your code, it's still a publicly accessible HTTP endpoint. While this behavior is technically correct, it can lead to unintentional exposure of such functions. To improve security, we have introduced the following enhancements. Dead code elimination. Unused server action won't have their IDs exposed to the client-side JavaScript bundle, reducing bundle size and improving performance. Secure action IDs. NextJS now creates unguessable non-deterministic IDs to allow the client to reference and call the server actions. These IDs are periodically recalculated between builds for enhanced security. So here is a server action, and here is update user action, delete user action. This action is used in our application, so NextJS will create a secure ID to allow the client to reference and call the server action. This action is not secure, is not used inside our application, so NextJS will automatically remove this code during next build and will not create a public endpoint. You should still treat server action as public HTTP endpoints. Learn more about securing server action. Optimizing bundling of external packages table. Bundling external packages can improve the cold start performance of your application. In the app router, external packages are bundled by default, and you can opt out specific packages using the new server external packages config option. In the pages router, external packages are not bundled by default, but you can provide a list of packages to bundle using the existing transpile packages option. With this configuration option, you need to specify each package to unify configuration between app and pages router. We are introducing a new option, bundle pages router dependency, to match the default automatic loading of the app router. You can then use the server external packages to opt out specific packages if needed. So here is our next config. Bundle pages router dependencies to server external packages. Package name, export default, next config. ESLint 9 support. NextJS also introduces support for ESLint 9 following the end of life for ESLint 8 on October 5, 2024. To ensure a smooth transition, NextJS will remain backwards compatible, meaning you can continue using either ESLint 8 or 9. If you upgrade to ESLint 9 and we detect that you haven't adopted the new config format, NextJS will automatically apply the ESLint use flag config equal to false escape hatch to ease migration. Additionally, deprecated options like -ext and -ignore path will be removed when running NextLint. Please note that ESLint will eventually disallow the older configuration in ESLint 10, so we recommend starting your migration soon. For more details on these changes, check out the migration guide. As part of this update, we have also upgraded ESLint plugin React Hooks to version 5, which introduces new rules for React Hooks usage. You can review all changes in the changelog for ESLint plugin React Hooks 5. Development and build improvements. Server components HMR. During development, server components are re-executed when saved. This means any fetch request to your API endpoint or third-party services are also called. To improve local development performance and reduce potential cost for build API calls, we now ensure hot module replacement can reuse fetch responses from previous renders. Learn more about server component HMR cache. Faster static generation. For the app router, we have optimized static generation to improve build times, especially for pages with slow network requests. Previously, our static optimization process rendered pages twice, once to generate data for client-side navigation and second time to render the HTML for the initial page visit. Now we reuse the first render, cutting out the second pass, reducing workload and build time. Additionally, static generation workers now share the fetch cache across pages. If a fetch call doesn't opt out of caching, its results are reused by other pages handled by the same worker. This reduces the number of requests for the same data. Advanced static generation control. Experimental. We have added experimental support for more control over the static generation process for advanced use cases that would benefit from greater control. We recommend sticking to the current defaults unless you have specific requirements, as these options can lead to increased resource usage and potentially out of memory errors due to increased concurrency. Const next config. Experimental. Static generation retry count 1, static generation max concurrency 8, static generation min pages per worker 25. Other changes like next image removed swoosh in favor of sharp. Next image change default content disposition to attachment. Error when src has leading or trailing spaces. Apply react server condition to limit unrecommended react api imports. Remove support for external next font package. Remove font family hashing. Force dynamic will now set a no store default to fetch the package. swc minify messing suspense with csr bailout ends output file tracing behavior by default. And remove deprecated option. Remove auto instrumentation for speed insight must now use the dedicated Vercel speed insights package. Remove xml extensions for dynamic sitemap routes and align sitemap urls between development and production. We have deprecated exporting. Export const runtime experimental edge in the app router. User should now switch to export const runtime edge. Calling revalidate tag and revalidate part during render will throw an error. The instrumentation JS and middleware JS files will now use the vendor React packages. The minimum React Node.js version has been updated to 18.8.0. The deprecated suspense prop has been removed, and when the component is used in app router, it won't insert an empty suspense boundary anymore. When resolving modules on the edge runtime, the worker module condition will not be applied. Disallowing use SSR false option with next dynamic in server components. Metadata updated environment variable fallback for metadata base when hosted on Vercel. Fixed tree shaking with mixed namespace and name imports from optimized package. Imports parallel routes provide unmatched catch-all routes with all known params. Config bundle pages external is now stable and renamed to bundle page router. Dependency config server component external package is now stable and renamed to server external package. Create next app new project. Ignore all .env files by default. The output file tracing route. Output file tracing includes and output file tracing excludes have been upgraded from experimental and are now stable. Avoid merging global css file with the css module files deeper in the tree. The cache handler can be specified via the next cache handler path environment variable. The pages router now supports both React 18 and 19. The error overlay now displays a button to copy the Node.js inspector URL if the inspector is enabled. Client prefetches on the app router now use the priority attribute. NextJS now provides an unstable rethrow function to rethrow NextJS internal errors in the app router. Unstable after can now be used in static pages. If a next dynamic component is used during SSR, the chunk will be prefetched. The ESM external options is now supported on the app router. The experimental allow development build option can now be used to allow node env development with next build for debugging purpose. The server action transform are now disabled in the pages router. Build workers will now stop the build from hanging when they exit. When redirecting from a server action, revalidation will now apply correctly. Dynamic params are now handled correctly for parallel routes. On the edge runtime, static pages will now respect stale time after initial load. Vercel OG updated with a memory leak fix. Patch timings updated to allow usage of packages like MHW for API mocking. Pre-rendered pages should use static stale time. And here are the list of contributors: the NextJS team, TurboPack team, and the NextJS doc team. And these are all the other users who have helped with this particular release. So yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching. Bye.